Happy June, everyone. This is Jill Novak, and I'm here with Kelsey Brusnyk. And Kelsey came into my awareness when a friend of mine went to study at Halepule, the food of Ayurveda. And Kelsey runs the School of Elevated Living through Illumin Ayurveda. And I just wanted to talk to Kelsey today about food. So thanks for being with me today, Kelsey.
Yeah, so happy to be here.
Now, one of the first things that struck me about Ayurveda when I started learning about it was that they care very much about when you eat. And I feel like we live in a culture where, well, they care very much about food in every dynamic. But I feel like we live in a culture that we get drilled into us what you eat, what you eat, what you eat, what you eat. And then yet we're still served bad food for us. And then this culture of Ayurveda comes along and they care about how you eat. They care about how you prepare your food. They care about when you choose to eat. And then they care very much also about when you choose not to eat. So I just wanted to ask you a question about that. Like, can you speak to that for us?
Yeah, and I think that's such an amazing topic to start this off because, there's the Ayurveda saying that when diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. And when diet is right, medicine is of no need. And diet, like you were saying, it's both what we're eating, but it's also the hows. And you can be eating the best food on the planet, but if you're not eating it in a balanced way, then you're getting very little out of it. As opposed to someone who's eating poor quality food and maybe not the best things, but if they're eating it in a balanced way, then they're going to probably actually be getting more out of it than the imbalanced way of eating good food. So it is something that's incredibly powerful. And actually, I really like it as more of an entry point for new people into Ayurveda as well, because a lot of people can get confused and about all the different levels that you can go to with refining the diet, because there's definitely levels, but starting just with the hows is incredibly powerful. And again, exactly for that reason, that you can be eating the best food on the planet, but if you're eating in ways that your body can't digest it and utilize it, then you're going to be not getting the fruits of that food.
And we can think of that person, who on the surface, they look like they're doing everything right. And somehow the health isn't following. And then you can look at someone who you're like, and how are they healthy? Because they look like they're doing everything wrong on the surface, and yet somehow their body is metabolizing. So speak to some of the hows then.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the first hows is to chew our food. And we live in a very, I know it sounds so simple. And what I like to say is that, Ayurveda, it is the science of life. And it's, in a way, most of us come to it as adults. I would have been very fortunate if I came to it as a child, but I didn't. Yeah. Here I am. But most of us come to it as adults. And in a way, it's like we're relearning all of these things that we thought we learned as a child, things as simple as chewing our food. And so it's pretty amazing when I ask people, how many times do you chew? And they say, I chew a few times. They don't even know. And
no, we don't know.
Right. So chewing is one of the first things that no matter what it is you're eating. So I do work with a lot of clients with food addiction and working toward healing and moving beyond food addiction. And a big piece of where we start is weight issues as well. And a big place of where we start is just learning how to eat the food that they are eating in a balanced way so that they start to feel good, and then they get the momentum of feeling better in their bodies, which then helps them to continue to make more
better foods.
Right, because from the inside they're wanting to feel better and they've had that direct experience. So the simplest way is to chew. So digestion begins in the mouth with the enzymes in the saliva. So actually fully mixing the food with the saliva starts the digestive process. And so then it goes to the stomach in a form that the stomach can actually process, which then means it goes to the intestines in a form the intestines can actually process. So in order for the body mechanics to do their job, then chewing well is something that is simple and seems easy, but it's actually very challenging that we need to learn how to do. So very powerful though. One of the ways to know if you're chewing well enough is if there's unchewed food coming out the other end at the end of it. Right? I think I chew well, but I am seeing pieces like the corn and other things.
Yeah, corn is always the one.
Exactly. You know, we get in a hurry. And so it's really about slowing down. And there's a couple things that you can do to help support that process of chewing better. You can count your chews. You can count 20 or 30 chews, but it's not something that you want to continue doing or become obsessive or compulsive about. You use it as a tool to start to learn how to feel and to slow down. But eventually what you want to do is work toward the feeling of the food in your mouth. It's going to feel mushy. It's not going to feel like there's chunks or solids in there. Because in the end, some things are going to take longer to chew, like barley, right? That's going to take a little longer.
Or people who, like, if you're having a steak, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. The foods that are more dense and have less moisture in them are going to take longer, and they're going to require more because they require more moisture from our saliva. And then the other foods, though, like there's things like watermelon, right? And that's not going to take a whole lot of chewing. And so having it be more about the feeling, but using the counting is an effective way to get to that feeling place. Another great one is putting your utensil down in between bites. And it gives you just a pausing point as well. Yeah.
I love that. It's like, and because that's what they say to do is try and eat without distraction. So what you're doing right now is you're not only telling people to eat without distraction, but you're actually telling them where to put their awareness so that it's different than just like, don't have your phone in front of you scrolling your social media as you're shoveling in your lunch, but you're saying, wait a second, this is the kind of stage I want you to set while you consume your food.
Yes. And it's amazing because one of the things that happens when we actually start chewing the food is we start tasting the food more as well. And I'm teaching I'm teaching Ayurveda and I'm doing the cooking for a yoga teacher training right now. And just after the first segment, it's in 4 segments, a weekend a month. And, a student already wrote and said, just by chewing her food, she's like, I'm actually tasting it more. Yeah. And it's amazing that, that we tend to overeat a lot of the time and not feel satiated because we're not letting ourselves experience the food fully. So when we chew it, we experience the textures and the feeling of it and also the taste. And then the taste actually cues the body for satiation. And so it's also part of, ends up being an important part of eating an appropriate amount.
Yeah. Because when your body cues satiation, it's saying, I've had enough.
Right. And if you're not tasting it, and that's the thing, is satiation is, it's physical, but it is also mental and emotional. And, I've heard people say that, food isn't entertainment. And there is some level to that, but at the same time, there needs to be some aesthetic appeal to what we're doing and how we're doing it. So sometimes people are like, oh, it's so boring. And it's the same thing all the time. Well, it shouldn't be. It should be, it should be something that you're excited about and something that is beautiful for you. And so that you're satiating your physical body, but also your senses. So you're seeing it, you're feeling it. Yeah. And just being aware of it.
I love that because I do think everything I learn about Ayurveda, it's almost like every time I learn some new little thing about Ayurveda, I go, well, duh. It just feels like we know this stuff already. And yet no one's ever taught it to us. And yet when we learn it, our whole body goes, well, of course.
Right. Well, the comments I hear most from my clients and as I'm talking with them and students is, it just makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. And sometimes people if they're trying to work through it on their own initially, or they've been exposed to a perspective on it that might feel more rigid, then they end up getting a little bit, sometimes they end up feeling like, I don't know if this is realistic. And it's so amazing because even a lot of those people, a lot of them don't quit. They keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. They're like, it's not working for some reason, but I know it should be. And they keep going. And I find that a testament to just that natural knowing that we have in us, that they are principles based in nature and we are part of nature. And so we're connecting with that. It's really amazing. Yoga and Ayurveda are both described as a remembrance. Yes. And in the Charak Samhita, one of the texts of Ayurveda, there's a story at the beginning that I love. It's the story of all the rishis, so all the seers sitting around and chatting about how they're in the Sat Yuga, right? They're in the golden ages. Everyone's enlightened. They're looking ahead and they can see that, society is going to kind of decline a little bit. People are going to start forgetting. We've got to write this stuff down because they're going to forget. And so they wrote it down. And so now here we are studying the text, trying to remember.
Trying to remember.
Right, to tell us, to see that, oh, humanity is going to get a little distracted out there, and this is going to really help them to, you know, live good lives amidst all the distraction. So
I think that's one of the big things about this whole idea of how you eat, is that Ayurveda asks us to not be distracted. It asks us to like focus your energy. And so it's almost like two things, like don't graze all day long and just like mindlessly, you know, put food in your mouth for whatever reasons we're doing it. We're numbing, we're bored, we're, you know, avoiding, or whatever. We've got cravings that aren't healthy that we're following. And Ayurveda sort of asks us to see that distraction, and can you create like just meal times,
right,
and make them anchored in your routine so that your digestive system kind of knows how to respond. It's like, I'm going to turn on because I know that you're going to eat.
exactly.
Tell me about that kind of idea that, I mean, we're being asked to sort of curate a couple or three good meals in a day and not do that grazing thing.
Definitely. Yeah. And so I'll start off my answer here with just saying that my current teacher in Ayurveda is wonderful. And he talks about the purpose of Ayurveda is to create good space, in our body, and also to learn how to create good space in the environment around us so that we can live to our maximum lifespan of 100 or 120 years old. And I like to ask people like, hey, 100 or 120 years old, like, is that a typical lifespan that you think people live to these days? And most of them say, no, like 80, 85 maybe. And then I say, okay, so is it attractive to you to live to 100 or 120 years? Mm. And they kind of go, right, exactly. They say, I don't know, like what I see of what happens at that age doesn't look so appealing, right? And so it's really fascinating, but the body is designed to live that long. And there's 6 phases that everything passes through, including human beings. And that's pre-existence, birth, growth, maintenance, decay, and death. So the pre-existence and the birth and the growth phase, they're pretty set, but the maintenance phase and the decay phase are what we have control over. So ideally, what we're doing is we're increasing the maintenance phase of this body that we're in, which is our vehicle for experiencing life, and decreasing the decay phase. So in terms of, you're talking about curating the schedule of regular eating, you know, it's really about learning how to align with the mechanics of the body so that it can do its best job without wearing down, without breaking down, and without having symptoms and causing issues that detract from our quality of life. Because ultimately we came here to have an experience of being human. It's hard to have that full experience when we're distracted by symptoms, when our body's in pain. And so it does require honoring the urges of the body. Right. Yeah, exactly. Like being present so that we start to learn through the yoga practices, through practicing Ayurveda, to not suppress the urges of the body. So there's any natural urge. So hunger, sleep, sneezing, yawning, all of those things, elimination, urination, but that we learn to suppress the urges of the mind. And so exactly like you're talking about grazing all day. So that's an urge of the mind. And so the body, though, you know, it will do fine with a 4-hour break between the food. It will do just fine.
No one's going to die of starvation in 4 hours.
Exactly. And so it's going to do just fine. And giving it that time allows it to actually do its job properly and get a rest. So what happens when we start eating too close together, then the food that's already gone into the digestive tract doesn't have the time to actually complete its digestion before you put in other food. So the actual physical processes and the energy that are part of your digestion go up to this new food. It's like, oh, wait, what's that? And it goes up there. And then this food that you've eaten, even if you've chewed it well, right? So let's say you've got the chewing part down, right? Even if you've chewed it well, then it's not going to happen appropriately. So the idea is that we will work toward having at least 4 hours between meals. In the beginning, if people's digestion is really sensitive, and there's a lot of people who can only handle small amounts at a time. So then there are the exceptions, of course, where people will eat small meals throughout the day to start to build their Agni and then start to shift. But yeah, ideally we would be allowing that gap. and eating 2 or 3 meals a day.
Mm.
And, you know, if you were to have your meals were 6 hours apart and you had something small in between there, then, you know, then go for it. But that's, you know, a general practice. You know, of course, if you're having something that's really light, like fruit in the morning, if it's 3 hours and you're okay, like I'm actually pretty hungry. I feel well digested. And then, you know, that, you know, it's time to eat again, then you can, you know, then you go ahead. So it's also connecting with your inner wisdom too, but there is actual, you know, the body is a machine in certain ways that has function that we all have, you know, as common to us as human beings that we can align to.
And digestion is like really the key focus of Ayurveda. Like Ayurveda talks about not just food needing to be digest, but every life experience needs to be digest. Everything you smell, see, taste, touch, hear needs that area of a digestion. And I have this concept in my head that digestion is very energy expensive. And that's why we want to sort of be gentle and or cognizant of when we use it. This idea that if we are grazing all day and we keep our digestion having to be turned on all day long, that's energy that if our body has like X amount of energy, it's now being used for digestion, and it's not free then for anything else we might desire to do. So this idea that when we're constantly digesting, it's like an app that runs the battery of your phone down really, really fast. Or
right. And so
when you speed in your car and you get the gas you run out of gas really fast. Like, yeah, do I have that right in my head?
Yeah. And it has me think about ojas. So that
yes.
The end product, ojas. So I'll just say for those who might not be familiar with the word, ojas is it's the end product of digestion. And it's a substance but it's also an energy that's responsible for our vitality, our immunity, and our bliss. And ojas is, so when we chew food, when we digest our food well, ideally then it goes and it forms rasa dhatu. And rasa dhatu is the blood plasma. And from there it goes and it forms rakta dhatu, which is the blood, and then mamsa, which is the muscles, and then meda, which is the fat, and then asti, which is the bone, and then maja, which is the marrow, and then shukra, which is the reproductive tissue. And so there's a whole lot more in fertility issues these days, and there's a whole lot more imbalanced eating and grazing and things like that, not chewing. So it makes sense that the tissues aren't, you know, and if they're not getting fed properly, then that shukra dhatu is also not going to be get fed properly. And then the product that comes from shukra is this ojas. It's our vitality and our immunity and our blissfulness. So Ayurveda is very much, you know, it's curative. You know, there are some things that are incurable at certain points, but for the most part, you know, you can cure disease, you can maintain health, but as you know, at its truest essence, it's really about prevention and learning how to live a balanced life so that we prevent ourselves from going to those places of needing the cure. And
this is where that idea of awareness comes in, because Ayurveda talks about almost like, I think they say that Western medicine can't diagnose disease until they can, you know, give you a blood test or something. And that's at stage 4 almost. And these first 3 stages of disease are all really small things that if you started to pay attention to, would help you be aware and then create balance. So I wanted to go back to digestion and just talk about how some people go out of balance in their digestion and it results in like constipation and gas and bloating. Some people go out of balance and it's more heartburn or diarrhea kind of stuff. And some people go out of balance and it's just a sluggishness, a heaviness and unmoving, not in a dried up constipation way, but just, Can you speak to kind of those first cues that your system gives you that you're out of balance?
Yeah. So, you know, I would say probably one of the first few would be the energy levels. If there's uneven energy throughout the day, then you know something funny is happening in there.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. And that would be something that would be common to all 3 forms of imbalanced digestion. Right, exactly. And so, you're exactly right. Gas and bloating, you know, that's one of them that it indicates that things aren't quite happening very well in there. And that's again, and these are symptoms that people have habituated as being normal.
It's normal for me.
Exactly. Like before I came to Ayurveda, I just considered myself a gassy person. I didn't
Yeah.
think that I was on the way to disease necessarily. I just thought, wow, I'm a gassy person. And I didn't really relate it to the food. I didn't realize that, oh, even having gas, when you're having an elimination of bowel movement and you pass some gas as part of that, then that would be appropriate. But most of the time, otherwise it's, oh, something didn't happen right in there. The Vata dosha in particular is getting imbalanced in the digestive system. And so the gas and the bloating, but then also, yes, the heartburn, if someone has more of the fire element in them, then they can experience that. Anything burning. I think the heartburn or just general feelings of acidity in the gut would be one of those first signs. And then, and then the sluggishness, like you mentioned, again, just not feeling hungry. If you waited 4 hours and not feeling hungry by the next meal would indicate that the digestion is not happening properly. So the people who are hungry all the time, that's another one. Like people who have huge appetites, they eat a ton and then they're hungry half an hour later. Yeah. And so that also, it's like, yeah, you have a strong digestion, but it's too strong.
Yeah, it's like the fire is burning and all you're doing is putting another log, and the fire is just like,
exactly,
it's everything, but it's not necessarily metabolizing into all of those tissues, right?
Exactly.
So able to extract the nutrients into create those development of tissues as they go through the body.
Right. And so that excess hunger and that digesting too fast is also one of those very first signs. As well. And then, and what happens is that a lot of times people will be able to, those types of people will be able to eat whatever they want and have no, feel like they have no repercussions, like their weight's balanced, they feel good. Then they hit a certain age, and usually it's around the 40s or the mid 30s, 40s, and all of a sudden they put on a bunch of weight. And they're like, oh my God, like I used to be able to eat anything. And it's just like, yeah, because you had a very strong fire, but at some point it's going to burn itself out. And then start to feel the effects of it. And that's not uncommon. On the flip side of it, there's the people whose digestions are very sluggish and they're just never hungry. And that's also an issue. And so,
Or the Vata people who just choose never to eat.
Right.
Like,
what? Not having appetite at all and forgetting. Right? Exactly. Yeah. So having, like, we should be hungry, generally 2 or 3 times a day, depending on, what our lifestyle is like and how we're choosing to, to nourish ourselves in that way. But we should clearly be hungry. It's perfectly fine to be hungry for the couple of hours leading up to a meal. And that's part of, I think, the grazing issue these days is we have so much available to us and there's so much instant gratification with everything. And that, people get afraid to be hungry. And it's like, oh, I'm hungry, I have to eat. It's like, no, you're hungry. That's great. It means that you've digested your food and you can give things a break now.
Yeah. And there's this idea of being able to know what it's like in your body to both feel hunger and know what that feels like, and then feel satiation and know what that feels like. It's like, I am full and I am empty, and to understand both those feelings, both of those are good sensations in the body.
Right. Definitely. Yeah.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. One is, I learned from one of my Ayurveda friends this idea that your body will tell you when it's full by burping. This first burp indicates, can you teach me about that?
Yeah, it's a great one. So the burp, so the body can, we'll say, process a certain amount of food, and the body is divine. Again, my teacher, he'll say the body is more divine than the mind, because our mind will just get caught up in like our attachments, our addictions.
Yeah.
But the body, it really knows. And so, the body is very divinely, made. And so in the stomach, there's going to be, there'll be about a third of the stomach will have food in it. About a third will have liquid in it, and then a third should have air. If you think about it, you need that space, that third space in the stomach for it to actually move, to process. It's moving things around in there. It has to mix it around. And so it needs that space. So if we eat right up to the point where we're full and can't even move, that's how I used to eat all the time. I remember the days when I just eat. And I was overeating
everything.
Yeah. But I remember just being like needing to lay down after eating, like going for Christmas dinners and being like, I'm just going to go up to like grandma's room and lay down for an hour or two and come back down and join the party, because it was just like my body was like, whoa, like what are we supposed to do here? So if you're eating your food, and the thing too is a lot of people say, oh, well, I don't burp. And if you're chewing your food at a moderate pace, if you're relaxed inside and again, chewing, then there will be a displacement of air. So sometimes it is like a burp. Sometimes it's a little belch. Sometimes it's a little, almost a hiccup, but there's a really clear movement of air that comes up the throat. And it's interesting because I will teach people about this, and then they'll be chatting, and they'll have a burp while they're talking and eating, keep eating and eating, and then they'll burp again later and go, oh, there's my first burp. Like they don't even realize that they've had that displacement of air because everyone's so used to just eating over it.
Yeah.
And so,
it's another thing like chewing. We've never been taught to notice it, pay attention to it, or give it any meaning.
exactly, right. And now the burp can come early if you're overexcited, if you're talking a lot, then
Okay.
you're going to be creating some tension in the gut. So it might have that reflex. And then also too, and so that can come early in that case, if you're nervous, or if you're overexcited and talking a lot. Sometimes it won't come if you're nervous. So some people who have issues with food and they're just really uncomfortable around food, sometimes they're so tense that there's just not room for the body to let go enough to have that reflex.
Okay.
So it is a thing to work with and to pay attention to. But again, if one is chewing, if one is practicing relaxing, then over time, then this signal, and it's amazing because you don't have to worry about how much you're eating because your body will tell you. And it becomes a really easy way. And then what you're going to start to do is you're going to start to learn how much to put on your plate, how much food, right? Because then you start to connect in and you just know, like you're connecting in with that innate amount. So yeah, some people will say, the second burp. And actually in one of the classes I was taking recently, someone asked the doctor, I said, oh, I've heard people say, stop at the second burp. And he laughed and he said, yeah, I used to be someone who said, stop at the third burp because I love food. So
I could just give myself a few more bites.
Exactly. And he was just laughing, but he said, no, he said, it's the first burp. And he said,
funny.
Right.
You need it to be second while you're learning this lesson. Use the second one while you're learning the lesson.
Yeah. Eat your food and notice how much you're burping. And then, and then start to back up. Then have a little less food next time and have a little less food next time until you hit that first burp. And because a lot of times too, if people are used to making big portions, then stopping is harder when there's a lot of food left on your plate.
Yeah. And that's it. We've been taught that. Clean up your plate, finish your meal. You don't, it's like you don't get anything unless. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot of family, some scar or impressions usually in even your heritage, like from just the past, and people who have had some starvation or have had like some lack of food as well in their past. But it's a really valuable thing to start to pay attention to and to relax. And again, I not to get all to ease your weight, like you said, to start I like to say, start backing up in the process so that you realize, okay, and start to notice how you feel. Like when you have that first burp, when you do notice like, okay, how does my body actually feel? Like I know this food is tasty. I know my mind and my tongue want more, but how does my body feel? And you'll start to play it because the body shouldn't feel excessively full. We should feel grounded and satiated, but we should feel energized after a meal. We should feel light and energized. And
not like you have to go have a nap on your grandma's bed.
Exactly. Or that we're like super heavy. And so it's a really valuable thing. Now, what I will add one piece here too about if the digestion is really imbalanced, and this is when I learned about this tool in the beginning, I did not have very good Agni or digestive fire. And so a little bit of food was still a lot for the digestion to process, and the body knew that. So I was actually working as an assistant at a yoga teacher training, and we were taught this, and I was sitting with, I think, 2 or 3 other assistants, and we sat there and we had our beautiful plates of food, and we took a bite and we chewed it and we were having fun, and then we're paying attention and chewing, and then we took another bite, and then I burped after 2 bites of food. And I was just like, I was in a situation and an environment where I had the support to stop. I cried. I definitely cried. I was like, I want to eat this food. But a few of us decided to just go with it. And so for a few meals, we could eat only very little, because that is actually only what the body could physically handle processing. And so then as we stopped and the body was allowed and given the space to actually clean itself up, then within a week we were eating more food, and gradually, we got back to eating regular portions, and it changed everything tremendously. A lot of us, we dropped a lot of weight initially in that process because the body in the poorly digesting was putting on poor quality tissue. So when you let things clean up, it will start to purge that poor quality tissue, but then you build it back. You should build it back. Better
good quality tissue.
Right, because you're actually utilizing the nutrients. And so, that like we did it in that kind of that extreme way, but when people are, and because we could, and we were in this situation where we had the support and the lifestyle to support that. But generally, you can start by just, what fits in your two hands is also a nice reference. And so you can serve yourself that amount, eat that amount, and just keep working on chewing, even if you burp, especially if you're someone who's very active, so you don't freak out and then just or if you feel like you're dropping a lot of weight, then you can put that amount, but don't eat more than that amount. And then just start to back it up a little bit from there until you start giving your body more space to actually clean up the indigestion. And then things will start to clean up, and then you'll be able to eat more and whatnot. So
it's also fascinating.
Yeah, it truly is. It's just stuff that's natural, but it's not our normal. Again, and a big part of it is just really deciding that we want to start to feel better in life. And I was teaching recently, and then here's a list of Vata symptoms, and here's a list of Pitta and the Kapha. And someone said, like, oh my gosh, or the list of symptoms for imbalanced Agni. And people said, oh my gosh, like, so if I have two, what's the okay range? And they're like, if I have like 2 symptoms of Vata versus 10, like, is that like, how bad is each one? I said, well, a symptom's a symptom, right? But like human beings, we're resilient. Look at how we can walk through life, and people walk through
and have all those symptoms and still walk through life.
Exactly. And have all sorts of kind of crazy food habits and whatnot, and still live a life. And so it's not something to get obsessed about or, freaked out about, but or compulsive about, but really it's just recognizing that there's layers to feeling good. And, I was actually teaching to yoga teacher trainees, and saying like, who here generally feels like you're healthy? And a lot of them raised their hand. And because they do, like, they're conscious of what they eat, what they put in their body. And so I said, yeah. And so you probably don't have a lot of disease, although some of them do actually, and did. But that, that there's levels of well-being, and we basically end up habituating a certain level of well-being. As we start to make changes, and we start to feel better. Oh, I'm more energized. Oh, I'm more mentally clear. Oh, my emotions are operating easier, as well as some of those big gross symptoms moving away. So it's more about like levels of well-being that we can keep feeling better and better and better. So you can keep refining the diet, like down to things like taking the skins off your almonds, which, that's not one of the
biggest things. Ayurveda can get very specific about it. Ayurveda can get very specific about the what to eat. I mean, we could start talking about the 6 tastes of Ayurveda, or we could talk about different seasons or the tastes for different constitutions. I actually have one burning question, because I feel like the Ayurvedic community would tell you not to make smoothies, and not to like throw all these different foods into a blender and blend them. And yet smoothies and blender drinks and stuff like that are pretty common and hot topics right now. So what's your take on that? What's your take on the whole like smoothie, even if it's a beautiful green smoothie full of all the good foods? What do you think?
Yeah. And it makes sense that we're attracted to, like, we like the smooth taste, most of us, right? Smooth. We like the convenience.
Like the chewing's already been done for us.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. And so the thing is that there's several things to consider when having a smoothie and when formulating your smoothie. And so, when I work with clients, I say, okay, how can you make this the best experience for your body? Because there are ways to do that. So one of the food combining principles is fruit and vegetables.
Yeah.
Right, because the digestive, keeping them separate, or we'll say keeping fruit basically separate from other foods, because fruit digests a lot faster than other food does. Okay. And so if you're eating fruit, let's say you're having this green smoothie and you have bananas or apples in it or something like that, and you're eating this smoothie, and then that fruit wants to digest quickly. And it will start digesting quickly, but the digestive process, again, is going to be slowed down by some of that harder to digest food, like the kale or the spinach. Mm-hmm. And so then what happens is that fruit ferments in the gut. And then eventually you're going to start getting gas and bloating and just like, sluggishness and whatnot. So it's really, you want to look at first about the food combining. So if you have, if you're making your smoothie, then I would say have fruits or vegetables.
Okay, choose one.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you want to put things like nuts and seeds and stuff in it, put that in the veggie stuff. And the fruit, like literally just fruit. So that's one consideration. And if you want your veggie one to be sweet, to have some sweetness in it, then, fresh dates are something that you can have with fruits or vegetables. So that's a really wonderful way. You can sweeten it with like maple syrup or honey or whatever, depending on the season. So there's ways that you can still have, you have to ask yourself, what are you looking for when you're adding the fruit into it? So if it's the sweet, there's other ways you can get the sweet taste in there.
Okay.
And you're going to do a whole lot better keeping them separate. So maybe one day you'll have a fruit smoothie, maybe the next day you're going to have your vegetable smoothie.
Okay.
So that's one piece of it. The other piece is about cooked versus raw food. And this is kind of a hot topic. Some people are like only cooked food and some people are like, oh no, but there's certain seasons, certain doshas that can handle more raw food. So the thing about that is any time that we're making a decision, we want to look at what is the state of my digestion and what is the state of my doshas and like what's the season, like what's going on. And that helps us as we learn how to assess via those three avenues, what decisions to make and when. So nothing's really a no, but it's more of a, okay, when is it appropriate and how much is appropriate? And so in terms of the raw versus cooked, again, lots of times people aren't cooking the food before they're blending it up, which means, and when the food is cooked, it starts the breakdown process so that the body can actually utilize that food more fully and digest it better. And so that's why, human beings started cooking food in the beginning is to be able to get the most nutrients. And a lot of people say, oh, but as soon as you start to cook it, it starts to lose nutrients. So it's actually, you're getting more nutrient value when it's raw. But the thing is that when it's raw, you can't digest it the best. And so you're actually getting less nutrients than if you lightly cooked it.
Right.
Right. So now if your ugly is strong, you're not having digestive symptoms. There's no gas, there's no bloating, there's no energy drops and fluctuations. You don't have dark circles under your eyes. That's another one. A lot of people these days are like, am I ever going to get rid of these things? And it's, I had them and I don't anymore. And it's, because it has to do with weak agni. And so you just look and say, okay, like what's the state of my, what's the state of my body? What's the state of my digestion? And then you decide how much raw food you want to have. If you're going to have any raw food, better to have it in the midday because the digestion is stronger at that time. And actually the agni is stronger in the winter time. People tend to go for smoothies and stuff in the summer, but the body's trying to keep itself warm in the winter. So it's generating more heat. So agni is stronger
in the winter
versus the summertime. The body's trying to cool itself down. So it's taking energy away from the heat process, this fire, agni is fire. And so it actually digestion tends to be weaker. Now, some people experience that a little bit differently. I've been in situations where I feel like I digest way better in the summer. And sometimes that's just because of the mental part of it. In the winter time, if you're not getting outside, you're not digesting life very well, then you might feel like your digestion is slower in the winter. Then summertime comes and you're all excited to get outside and you're in the sun and you're doing things. And so that digesting life better can actually have the agni feel like it's stronger.
Yeah.
So again, that's why it really becomes a feeling thing and just and being aware of the symptoms. And, if you're starting to get digestive symptoms, then cook those veggies just a little bit before you blend them up in that smoothie.
Okay. I have to get this right in my head then, because not necessarily that I thought digestion was stronger in the summer, because I wouldn't use that word, but my thought process was that it's your body is already trying to cool and bring things down. So if you give it more raw foods in the summer, it can handle that. Or if you can give it more dry food in the summer, the fire's already strong because it's summertime, it's pitta time. You don't need to do a lot of work to curate that strength. And then when we go to winter, it's almost like feed your body heavy grounding food, give your body good heavy fuel, because that digestion is stronger. But is it wrong that in summer seasons I would move to more raw, whereas where we live outside of the Rocky Mountains in Alberta, like we have a heavy winter. We have a long Vata season. So I would recommend to people, don't drink your cold smoothie in the middle of the winter in January. So did you just tell me the opposite of that? I just wanted to check.
Well, if it's raw, again, it depends on the digestion. So ideally, again, and that's the other thing with smoothies is that, ideally you'll have them room temperature
Yeah.
or warm.
Okay.
Yeah. So that, the cold, again, that's going to dampen the digestive fire. But yeah, the thing about, and then people will say salads and lightness and things, and that it is true that the taste of the things that we tend to put in the smoothies are lighter foods in general.
Yeah.
And that's where I think we get attracted to having those foods in the summertime, because again, in the winter, we want to have heavy things. And I don't know that a lot of people make sweet potato smoothies. Maybe they do. I haven't heard of that, but we want these heavy grounding things. And because they're the sweet taste, it's more of the earth and the water element. And then we have the lighter veggies, like, the carrots and then the greens, like a lot of the greens, they're more the bitter, astringent and pungent taste, which are more the earth element. So they are lighter foods in general. And so yeah, it can really go either way. And again, I think a lot of it has to do with it, but the principle of the Agni, again, it's just, and I had to wrap my mind around this too, like in the beginning.
Yeah. And I think I'm always doing that.
Right. It's like summertime, there's more sun. So we have more support for the digestion, don't we? But it's really about, again, it's that as the body's cooling, it's trying to decrease the heat. So it's going to decrease the heat of the digestive system as well. So if you've ever been outside, and let's just one more thing, if you've ever been outside for a day in the sun, like most people just feel like eating a little bit of fruit or something. They don't really actually feel like eating grains or whatever. Yeah. And so it makes sense that they'd be attracted to the veggie smoothies.
Watermelon.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it's lighter food. They're not having the heavy grains or the heavier vegetables or like the breads and stuff as much. So it does make sense. And again, and then it would just depend, that they would want those tastes, more of the bitter, pungent, astringent type thing. But, they just need to pay attention to, are they having symptoms? Another really common symptom of digestive imbalance is skin.
Yeah.
Acne. But a little bit of some salad in the summertime, again, it's lighter, as long like lettuce is actually very light, like it's so soft. I'll put a little bit of cooked grain or a little bit of some slightly sauteed carrots on top of some raw lettuce, and then it softens it a little bit, and that's great. And it feels lighter in the summertime. And so so it's this fascinating. I just love that Ayurveda, it's an art as much or more so than it is a science.
Yeah.
And so the raw food in the winter time, get Agni stronger in the winter time. That's the thing, is most people want warm cooked food.
We want to increase the strength, even though it's strong. We don't want to dampen it at all.
Right. And they want warm food.
Yeah.
And so in the summertime, we don't want cooked food. So we're more attracted to things like raw, because it's like, oh, I don't want anything hot, so I want something that's raw. And so, if from that standpoint of things, then it does make sense, because it's, but again, it's just a matter of, it's totally fine if you're not having the symptoms of imbalanced digestion. And you feel
that makes sense.
That you feel
makes
like
total sense. Yeah. And I think when you talk about levels of health too, it's almost like, well, if you're choosing between like Kellogg's Fruit Loops and a smoothie, we'd prefer you chose the smoothie.
Oh,
and then you can start to mess around with that, elevating the level of that smoothie.
Exactly, for sure.
Or moving away from the food combining, maybe.
Right, exactly. Just starting with separating the food combining. Don't have it as cold. Start to work it toward temperature, and then hold it in your mouth a little bit. Just mix it around in there a little. You're not just gulping it down, but you're tasting, again, because it's gonna play a part in the satiation of your body as well, and the digestive, because you still have to digest it. So you still want to mix it with the digestive enzymes a little bit. So those would be the three things I would say to keep in mind as you're having them, and start to play around with the combination, and then the temperature, and then also, the mixture with the saliva. And otherwise, it's great. It's fine. I'm in process of getting myself a blender, but I like blended things. We blend, you can blend
soups.
Exactly. And what is the difference really? It's just if it's raw or if it's cooked. And so again, it really comes down to, what is the state of your digestion? If you're, one of the things that strengthens digestion, which I think why people might feel like they can digest raw food better in the summer, is exercise.
Yeah.
So people aren't getting sun in the winter, and they're not exercising as much because it's -40.
Yeah.
You know that feeling. You don't really want to get outside. Then the digestion can start to feel more sluggish relatively, even though naturally it is stronger, but because of our lifestyles, it can actually feel a little bit less. But in the summertime, you're out all the time, you're walking, you're hiking, you're biking, you're doing whatever, and you're in the sun, and you're in the wind, a little bit of wind and breeze, through pranayama practices, but also just being out in the elements, all of that, wakes up the Agni. And so then, yeah, if you're feeling like, wow, like my digestion is doing well in the summertime, then great. But also just pay attention if you're realizing like, wow, like, I'm pretty tired after this day in the sun. Then you might want to have that, lightly cooked salad, just lightly cooked, just to ease the digestion of it. And on days when it's maybe like a more overcast day, when you're not feeling that excess heat necessarily, then go for more of the, the raw. But it's
funny because we always think
to it.
Yeah, we always think that anytime that you're tired, it means you need to add food. It's like add energy, add food. And sometimes that's not the case, is it? It's like the tiredness indicates that you don't want to add.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I feel like I could talk to you for like another hour or two super easily, Kelsey. But before we go and wrap up, I wanted to just give you an opportunity. I know that you're out on Vancouver Island right now, and I know that you have lots of online opportunities for people to work with you. Can you just tell us a bit about that right now and what that looks like in your world? Like if someone wants to work with you, what do we do?
Yeah, definitely. Well, my website is in process of being updated, but most of my things are on there at the moment. But I basically, yes, I consider Illumin Ayurveda and Yoga a school for elevated living, and basically, providing education and empowerment for balanced, healthy living naturally. Because a lot of, what I hear is people want to learn how to feel well and be able to do that in a natural way. So I do work with clients individually with health consultation and guidance, in groups as well. And then, and also, yes, so in group programs, and I will have one coming out. Actually, it's going to be about integrating Ayurveda into life. So understanding, okay, what is Dinacharya? Why would I do it? And then start to learn and kind of go through gradually integrating it. Because one of the problems is people trying to do too much too fast and getting overwhelmed. And same thing, okay, understanding the aha, which is the diet, and how can I start working with this and start letting myself experience change. So again, I do that privately with clients, and then also in group settings. And then I also teach yoga as part of that, and also independently as well. And then I have a whole lot coming up. So I have my Instagram handle is yogini.kelsey, and I will be talking about more kind of professional opportunities as well. There's an institute that I'm going to be building an Ayurveda faculty for and training people to be counselors. Right, exactly. And so that I'm going to have these two branches to my work: the School of Wise Living, where people can learn how to live healthy, balanced lives day to day, because Ayurveda is for the everyday person. It's for the everyday person to live well and to really maximize their experiences that they want, that they're choosing to have in life. And then also more professional opportunities. So a school of higher education. I do, and so that's what's going on. I have a podcast coming soon, just to provide more education as well. But the best way at this point is to just, to reach out and be on my website, my contact form, and stay posted on how things are developing there. But yeah, basically like helping people create sustainable health and vitality so they can live vibrant lives at their fullest potential. That's what I do.
I love it.
Like this light, we're here, like we might as well maximize it, right? And no one wants to feel bad. And we should also, again, be gradual with how we're doing things, because again, we want to be in life, and people want to go out and eat restaurants. They want to go to the smoothie bar and have a smoothie. And it's like, okay, so how do we start to look at what smoothie you're choosing at the smoothie bar, right? Yeah. Because it could be one, you can find what's the best option. So it's not about black and white or right or wrong and leaving this out entirely, or it's about learning the principles of what works best with the body. Yeah. And then choosing based on that. So making the best choices in a moment, even if they're not the perfect choices.
Well, and it's like I have that online health coaching group as well. And it's almost like we learn as our awareness increases of sort of what A plus B equals, like, oh, when this happens, then this, when we put our puzzle pieces together and we start to build our awareness of the effects of certain things in our daily rhythm, then we start to have these aha moments. And sometimes the aha moment happens fastest when you do everything wrong. Because everything's right, and it's like, yeah, I think this is working. And then one day you fall off these little small habits that you're changing, and you like beer and pizza and eat late and everything. And then the next day you're like, I feel awful. And it's in the moments where you screw up, where all your learning happens.
And another really great thing my teacher, I love, he says, we experiment to experience.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Because that's what builds it. It's like, and I think that's the important piece of Ayurveda is that we're experimenting and we're always refining as we're experimenting. And I think that it's just this glorious invitation to curate, like literally curate design your own life.
Exactly. Yeah. And it needs to come from the inside instead of being a set of rules that like, I have to follow this. Like, man, like the people who have the food list, like I can't have broccoli because I'm a Vata. I'm like, you can have broccoli. Like you can definitely have broccoli. It's just, anything. It's just how
saute that and eat it.
Exactly. Right. And so it's really about, we have to bring our inner wisdom along with it, right? And it's all about direct experience. So that as you start making changes, and I like to say that there's a Rumi quote that says, as you start walking along the path appears. So we walk, and then like you said, like we experience, we step off the path, and then there's another piece of the path going the other way. Okay. And so it's really about having direct experience and just really letting ourselves be where we are and see, where do I want to experience some change, and how can I start to fuss around with that a little bit? And then it's like, we can take it to whatever levels we want. We can feel better doing a few small changes, and we can completely change our ability, how we perceive the world and how we are in our body and our life as we keep going with it. But it doesn't have to be all or nothing, but you can just start walking along the way, and then what's natural and what's appropriate for you will just keep calling you, and you'll keep stepping into that, and everybody grows with it in their own time.
I think that's the biggest piece of wisdom you just said, just this idea that your inner wisdom has to be then what starts to lead the way, is that we're not following a script from anyone else, because their script is what works for them. Right. And we don't know if their constitution is at all close to what your constitution is. So we can go grab anyone's 4 steps to being the best person in the world, but that's their solution. And it's almost like we need to write our own book, and we need to experience it in order to know what our 10 steps are, or how we would be. Anyway, I'm fascinated, Kelsey. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me, and I wish you all the best. And I look forward to chatting with you more and seeing what happens in your world.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I love to talk about it anytime. So
I can tell. I love that part. This is definitely one of my juicy chats. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.